Perks recap podcast is back. Me and Al once again talking about the world of football, and we're continuing our list as well. We're going to get to the top 10 running backs of all time. I'm sure we'll have some honorable mentions. But anyway, Al, how you doing? And you got your phone situated.
Yes. I had a little bit of a phone issue. The people that know me well know that I'm a bit of a caveman anyway, so this is nothing new for me, but this was an unusual one because I left it on top of a car. By the time I got back, it seemed like it got run over by 14 things and there was nothing left but the case and the screen, the plastic screen that you can rip off kind of. And so yeah, all my stuff was gone. I had maybe half of my contacts left because I'm bad at saving things to the cloud or whatever you're supposed to do. So, but I am back in action and ready to rumble, my man. We were almost doing
Okay.
this I almost had to bring a string and a Dixie cup up to Connecticut. But we got it done.
All right. So, before we get to the running backs, I want to mention real quick. Did you hear? There's news now about um, Stafford getting traded,
Yes, which is
and there's a
fascinating.
there's a lot of traction about him possibly going to the Giants.
Now that's it. Listen, the Giants could do couldn't that's about as I can't imagine a better scenario for the Giants of having effective quarterback play next season. Um, I don't know. It's a bit of an odd match in that he's an aging, once great, still good quarterback, and they're a team that seems a long way away from being good. But hey, if they, I don't blame them for trying to stabilize their quarterback position. What do you think about that?
It's interesting. What I want to know is the plan moving forward. Uh, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now,
Yeah,
because at the most he's going to be there. Maybe I would think it would be like 2 years, probably.
I would
But
think so. Yeah.
if they go quarterback in this draft, I don't think he's going to want to come here knowing that if it goes bad, and they have a bad record, they're just going to throw the rookie in anyway. And he won't be playing after like week 10 or 11 or something.
Yeah. And listen, if Stafford has say in this, which I'm assuming he'll have some given his veteran status, I don't see him being willing to go to the Giants for any reason.
Well, yeah, that's true. He might not want to go anyway. But if this is the only place where he can go and get the starting job, if they like don't draft a quarterback,
Hmm.
I could see him going there.
Sure, sure. Oh yeah. If you narrow the options down far enough, the New York eventually becomes appealing.
Right, right, right.
I'm with you. But listen, and I get it from the Giants end 100% because they have just it's been just a mess ever since the Daniel Jones draft. And by the way, it came out. I'm having a hard time finding details. I think from what I heard, it was aired on that GM show or whatever that they did in the offseason about the Giants, where they had the Barkley call where they told him to go check his options. And but I'm not
Yeah.
really sure. But apparently, it's come out that John Mara fought Dave Gettleman over wanting Jalen Hurts instead of Daniel Jones in that draft.
Really?
How funny is that? And thank you once again, Dave Gettleman, the gift that keeps on giving.
I'll tell you
Oh,
when Daniel Jones had that year where he played well and they won the playoff game,
hmm.
all the talk was how great Dave Gettleman is.
Right, right. Yes. Well, they hadn't peered through the cracks close enough and looked at the fact that that guy couldn't figure out an offensive line. You know,
Yeah.
which whatever hope there was for Daniel Jones moving forward from that point was done because he never could pull that off, and either could the current guy. It's fascinating. But yeah, that's a fascinating Stafford thing, man. I'm really curious. To me, if I'm I'm trying to think if there's a team that's on the cusp of contending that needs a quarterback because that would make the most sense to me. But I can't think of one.
Could it be the Jets?
Oh, that's actually a reason. You know what? That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea.
They're closer than the Giants, that's for sure.
A lot, a lot closer. And Stafford's a lot better than Aaron Rodgers. at this point in their careers. So wow, that's a great. I didn't even think about that one. That's a really good idea. That's my favorite idea so far.
Yep. But anyway, I just heard that the traction was really getting up there with the Giants.
No,
Is what I heard.
that's a really interesting one, man. I mean, I can't imagine like if you're Matt Stafford, like it's not like it's a hidden secret in the NFL how bad their offensive line is. So, I mean, I just can't imagine what he would be thinking about that. It would be it'd be fascinating too because by all accounts Cooper Cup is even more guaranteed to be traded from everything I'm hearing too. Are you hearing that?
Yeah, I heard about Cooper Cup. Yep, absolutely.
Be interesting to see if they end up in the same place. We know they have a rapport.
Yeah, I'm one. Yeah, the thing is, the Giants, they got to come down on their offer. I mean, on their demands for Stafford. The Rams do because the Giants apparently don't want to offer more than a number three, and
Okay.
apparently they want a one or a
They're not getting a
two.
one for Stafford. No way.
They're not even getting a two for Stafford.
Maybe a two, but I don't think so. Yeah, no. He is a
Well,
quarterback, and they're more valuable than everything.
you know what I
So,
do is I'd give him a three in like next year's two.
yeah, there you go. That's the kind of thing that could get it done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yep.
reasonable on both ends, you know?
Yep. Now Cup is a different story. I don't know. I'm trying to
Cup
think
is a
where he's.
32-year-old receiver, I think, who
Yeah.
is awesome but clearly fading. So to me, he's third rounder or less, and
Yep.
probably
He's
less.
clearly fading and injury prone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm with you, man. He's I mean, if I'm looking for a receiver, I'm thinking, do I want to offer a fourth rounder for Cooper Cup?
Right. Right. And that might be worth it.
Because remember, DeAndre Hopkins got traded to the Titans at about the same point. I can't remember what they got for him, but it wasn't a mint.
No. No.
Interesting. All right, cool, cool. That's good stuff, though, man. I wasn't thinking about the stat. I had heard about it, but I hadn't really rolled it around the old noggin yet.
All right. So bring up your Philadelphia point that you talked to me
Okay.
about.
So here's a fun one to talk about. This is a Philly story to the nth degree right here. So a tradition started when the Eagles won in 2017, where Jason Kelsey would and a lot of the guys, the underdog defensive lineman guys like Chris Long and those guys would gesture to the crowd as they were cruising down the street in their float for beers, and the people would start chucking full beer cans at him. They'd grab it, pound it, and and everybody would go crazy. And they're like, they're perfect Philly guys. Well, this tradition apparently carried into this parade, which led to now, if anybody's ever seen Howie Roseman is about the size of my big toe. He is a tiny man, and um, and he was not paying attention. He was doing his thing. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He had his daughter beside him, and and there's celebrating. Nick Sirianni is standing up on a step, yelling to the crowd, and all of a sudden, a full beer can comes flying out of nowhere and pelts Howie right in the forehead, and he goes down to where like the camera angle the camera angles had him from about waist up maybe, and it hits him in the head. You see his eyes close, he clutches for his head, and he is gone out of the camera shot. And that's the last time you see Howie until he's on the steps of the art museum, which for people that don't know is where Rocky did his famous run in the original Rocky movie, and that's where they always have their parades in Philly. And he gets
Yeah, I've run up those stairs before.
Oh, you have to, right? If you're anywhere near Philly, you got to make a trip, man.
Yeah,
You
I've
got
gone there twice and ran up the steps both times.
That's so odd. Dude, my cousin did a what do you survive the show Survivor. He made a Survivor audition tape years ago, which the feature was him harpooning a barracuda underwater and then running up the Rocky steps. So Howie, an hour later or so, they're going through the speeches. It's Howie's turn, and he gets up, and he's now got a beer can shaped bruise on his forehead. And yells out to the crowd, "I bleed for Philadelphia." And he now has to never buy anything again in that city. And this is a guy who was reviled about 15 years ago. And he hung in and he's heading to the Hall of Fame now, which is wild, man. Wild.
Uh,
And all, but the beer can brews, dude, it's worth looking up if anybody didn't see it. Yeah,
yeah, I'm definitely gonna look it up because I need to see that.
it's priceless, man. It really is.
Is there any other NFL news to discuss before we move on to this list? I mean, we're just we're just over the Super Bowl. We got the draft coming up, but that's still 2 months away. I mean, we don't
Yeah.
have a whole lot. I mean, when is free agency? March?
Yeah, I think the next two big things are the combine and free agency. And the combine is at the end of February, and the I think the combine is next weekend, I think. And then let me check on when NFL free agency starts. I think you're
I think
right
it's
about
March
the first
11th. I want to say, or 15th.
start. That all sounds kind of right. I'm just not 100%. NFL free agency. Jeez, that should have been easy. Here we go. 4 p.m. March 12th.
Oh,
So
okay.
what
There you go.
what might be really cool, Craig? You tell me what you think. Is either it could be two separate episodes or one giant off-season episode. We do one after the combine that could be just the combine, or we combine it with free agency, or do another separate free agency a week or two later, whatever you think.
Well, the thing about that is the free agency. We don't know. It might be that it's too much to talk about because usually the free agency in the NFL is hot and heavy right from the start. There's just signings left and right all over the place as soon as it opens.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I think we can handle it though, because the there's only so many big names. You know what I mean? Like we're not
Right,
going to be
right, right. We
talking.
don't have to get into crazy details of somebody's backup nose tackle.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, like T. Higgins is going to be a big story. The Eagles' Zach Baun is going to be a major story. With T. Higgins is the biggest name of the entire free agency. And there's probably like 10 or 20 guys that we're going to be interested in, but we can do that. I think we can handle that pretty reasonably. Just like you said, no backup defensive tackles.
Right. Okay. All right.
That's awesome.
So let's get to this list then.
Let's do it, man. This was so hard. I love it. And it was hard. And I have,
It was real hard, and I tell you what, too. Another thing, I I went through a bunch of lists for research purposes and what other people thought, and I
mhm.
got to tell you, they're all very different.
Yeah.
Nothing is consistent. In one list, there's a player that was like number 8 or something on somebody's list, and the next list there was a top 25 running backs, and the guy who was 8 on the first list didn't even make the top 25.
Yeah, actually, I've seen stuff like that too, and it's wild. It's even like we've had some real fun doing these lists with Jordan on his pod, the Baseline, about the baseball players, and we talk about comparing cross generations and eras, and it's tough in baseball, but it's way harder in football, in my opinion. Just
Yes.
because the game was, I mean, it's the baseball's still basically the same game. You know what I mean? Football is
Yeah.
so different than it was in 1932. You know,
Right. Right. Right.
so it's really hard to do the generational thing. The stats, like I can look at baseball and see that Ty Cobb still has 4,000 whatever hits. You know what I mean? But some a tight end from 1937 isn't going to have the same stats as a tight end from the last 30 years. So it's a real fascinating exercise.
Yeah, and difficult.
Hmm. And I have a massive honorable mention list this time, and I probably another 10 I could have put on that. And
Yeah, yeah.
honestly,
I limit myself to I think about ten
yeah,
honorable mentions.
yeah, I'm right about there with you. And my top three I feel awesome about, and then after that, those the places could be swapped, and I wouldn't argue at all.
I feel that way about my top four.
Okay, nice, nice.
All right. Okay. Well, let's get to it then.
Let's do it.
Your number 10.
Okay. Well, this is a guy that I just had to put on the list because he was early on, he was my favorite running back that wasn't an Eagle. And you talked about those Sports Illustrated videotapes in one of the recent pods that you got when you renewed your subscription, and I got them too. And one of the favorite highlights I ever saw from that and in football in general is Earl Campbell running down the field while his jersey is getting ripped off and he's running over what seemed like 47 people, even though there were only 11 to run over.
Nobody ran harder than Earl Campbell.
Yeah, and I'm leaving
Tougher.
guys off this list that probably should be on over him, technically speaking, because he burnt out quickly because of the amount of carries. But he was one of the best I ever saw in his prime, and I had to put him on. He's one of my favorite running backs I ever saw.
Yeah, he did not make my list, but he's right in the honorable mention, and he's right there. I mean, 9,407 yards rushing, another 806 receiving, so a total of over 10,000 yards and 74 touchdowns.
Yeah, yeah.
What's funny is he had 806 receiving yards in his career, not a lot, but no receiving touchdowns. All his touchdowns were rushing touchdowns. He's the only one on the list that has no receiving touchdowns.
That I didn't even realize. I knew he wasn't a big receiver. I saw the yardage, but I didn't notice the touchdowns. That's wild, man. I didn't realize that. That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, so he, like I said, he didn't make my list, but he was right there and definitely was considered. There was just some other big numbers I just couldn't put him over, and we'll get to that.
And that's totally understandable. Yeah, I just because of my personal love, I had to throw him in there. I had
Okay.
to.
Well, I have the same thing for my number 10.
Okay.
My personal love, the reason why I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, and the reason why is because Tony Dorsett ran 99 yards against Minnesota, and I was
Ah,
like 5 years old.
I remember that too, man. That's great. That's
And
great.
that I became a Cowboy fan after that. So Tony Dorsett is my number 10. He ended up with 16,298 combined rushing and receiving yards
Yeah, he was great.
and 80 touchdowns. I'm sorry. So no, 90 touchdowns.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was incredible, man.
he had
He was.
12,739 receiving, rushing, and another 3,500 receiving with 90 touchdowns.
It really is amazing, man. He's on my honorable mention, by the way, and he is easily one of the most underrated players in NFL history, in my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not sure
He
how that
was
happened playing for the Cowboys.
the bigger back too, but he was fast.
Yeah, he didn't come off as a big back. He moved like a small back, but he had the body of a big back, which is one of the reasons he was so special.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, so he's the reason I'm a Cowboys fan. So I got to blame him.
That's awesome. That's great. Oh man. So I'm guessing your dad is a big Tony Dorsett hater.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
That's so awesome, man. Oh, I love it. That's great. Yeah, that's a good one, man. That's cool. He made your list because he was awesome. He's one of the 47 people in my honorable mentions.
Yep.
All right, my number 9.
Go for it.
Okay, another one of my favorites that wasn't an Eagle. And his career had 2 acts, and he's really high on a lot of these lists, but he would have been even higher if Al Davis wasn't an idiot at the time, and that is Marcus Allen.
He was one of the toughest ones to leave off the list. In fact, if this was a list of top 11 running backs ever, he'd be number 11.
Right on, right on. And I mean, it's
Because
again,
his numbers are ridiculous. He had over 5,000 receiving yards.
yeah, he was one of those just complete, all-purpose, do everything guys. And if I mean, you go back and you look at there was a span of time where the Raiders just stopped using him. He had an injury-prone season in '89, and then he comes back and he's just never used like in for them like he was again. And then he goes to Kansas City at 33 years old, Craig, for a running back. That's insane, and has a really productive next 4 seasons, and then a fifth that's okay.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
144 career touchdowns.
Yeah,
That's the most so far.
yep,
Over 17,000 combined yards.
yeah. I mean that's insane.
Yep, and for the official rushing yards, 12,243.
Yeah, he's an absolute monster, man. Absolute monster.
Yeah, I didn't see real early in his career, but I started really paying attention, and he was right there. He was on the Raiders. He was awesome, and he was one of the ones I was. definitely following once I got into it. I was he was a little before when I didn't see him right from the start, but probably
Hmm.
2 3 years in I saw him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Right there with you. And what I remember most honestly is seeing him seething on the bench for like 3 seasons, and then hearing he got, I forget if he got traded or was a free agent at that point. I don't remember, but he ends up on Kansas City and has that second act, and it
Was he
wasn't
on
like.
Kansas City with Joe Montana?
Yeah, exactly. It was, yeah, and that's exactly what it was. And that famous playoff win that they had, and between the two of them, they were starting an AARP club.
Yep, yep.
I love it. But I mean, Marcus had he had where was it? I just lost it. Where's the receiving stats? Dang it. There it is. He had 42 catches at 34 years old, like that. He was
Yeah,
really good for a long time. That's an
yeah,
unusual trait at
longevity.
running back.
Yep, longevity.
Yep. So there we go. There's my number 9, old Marcus. What do you have at 9?
All right, number 9 is controversial to say the least, but I put O.J. Simpson at number 9.
Okay. And listen, he was my first alternate. And
And the reason why, one of the reasons why, 2,000 yard season in a 14 game season.
yeah, that 2,000-yard season is more impressive than anyone that has come since.
Yeah, because it's at least 2 or 3 games shorter.
Exactly. And can you name another player on that Bills team?
Nope,
'Cause,
not one. And yeah, because they sucked, right? They were terrible.
exactly.
It
I
was just
can't either.
him. It was him against the world.
It was exactly him against the world. Him doing that on that Bills team would have been like Saquon Barkley doing it on the Giants before he went to the Eagles.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he ended up with 11,000 yards, another couple thousand receiving, 13,378 combined, 75 touchdowns. Um, the numbers aren't quite as good as like Marcus Allen, or there's a couple other people that in my honorable mention that maybe those numbers aren't quite as good as. But the 2,000 yards in 14 game season is really what kind of did it for me.
And that's enough. I get it 100%, man. I'm glad he made your list because I really struggled as much as you did with Marcus Allen. It sounds like I struggled not putting on OJ. So,
Yep, yep,
and he didn't hang in there as long as Marcus, but not many did. So that's not a complaint because not many
right.
running backs were productive until 38 years old or whatever it was. So that's, yeah. And I mean, until I don't we won't get into all the controversy and bad stuff that happened with OJ because everybody knows it. But growing up, OJ was the man. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
he
he was
was
on all the commercials and Naked Gun movies and
jumping over stuff in the airport for those whatever Avis commercials or whatever they
Avis,
were.
yeah.
Yes, and yeah, the Naked Gun, like you said, yeah. So yeah, it was a bad, long, hard fall for OJ, but yeah, he was a great running back, man. No doubt about it. No doubt.
No doubt. Okay. So you're number 7. No, I'm sorry,
Okay,
you're number 8. You're number 8.
number 8. All right, now this is really right here is where we get to the point where honestly I was scribbling and changing things right until I talked to you. So I like anybody I say between number 8 and number 4, I'm cool with swapping anywhere you want. But here's where I went. Adrian Peterson.
Awesome. That's the same one as me.
No way.
Number 8, Adrian
Oh, I
Peterson.
can't believe it. This was not one I expected for us to end up with anything the same until we got to maybe the top 3, maybe. But yeah,
Awesome.
Adrian Peterson, one of the best running backs ever, man. I mean, that guy was just pure running back. He
I remember
just
there was that one year where I think he ran for 2,000, right?
he
One
did.
one year. That
Yep.
year he ran for 2,000. I just remember like every game at some point or another he was taking off again for like another 70-yard touchdown. It was ridiculous how many long touchdowns he had that year.
Absolutely insane. He averaged, by the way, that was 2012. He had 2,097 yards, and he averaged 6 yards a carry that season, Craig.
Jeez.
I mean, that's numbers you usually only see from like a second running back who has a lot of juice that only got 70 carries that year or something. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
That's crazy. Um, yeah. Peterson, man, just one of the best running backs I ever saw. And talk about the amazing things that running backs did. The season, remember when it was a tried and true thing that everybody knew that if you tore your ACL at the end of a one season, you were not going to play the next season, and if you did, it was going to be the last couple games, and you were going to be a shell of yourself, right?
Right, and then he did it and came back and didn't miss a game. Right, he came back week one.
Didn't miss a game and ran for 1,485 yards.
Yeah, the guy, he's a machine. He's a machine.
Absolute machine. Absolute machine. So yeah, just an easy one to get into the top 10. Hard to figure out where to put him exactly, but again, I wouldn't argue with anywhere you want to put him between here and four. And yeah, just one of the best I ever saw.
Yep, 17,395 combined yards,
Yeah, geez.
126 touchdowns, 17,000. Marcus Allen did too. 14, almost 15,000 rushing yards as well.
Yes, and that's the really crazy thing about Peterson, because he was not a good receiver. He is,
No,
he for a running back he was a minus
six.
receiver.
He had 6 touchdowns as a receiver.
Yeah, you're right. He had one season, the season where he rushed for 2,000 yards. He also caught 40 passes. He did that twice in his career. Um, but so the reason I was saying that was not to rip on him as a receiver. It was to say how astonishing he is that he had 17,000 total yards when 90% of it came from rushing.
Yeah. By the way, so far the highest total we've had so far rushing yards.
Right on. Absolutely. Good call. Good call.
14,000, and even in the honorable mentions, no one's close. No one's really even that close.
No, you're
Everybody
right.
was around 12,000. Like even Marcus Allen, he had 5,000 receiving yards, so that's what gets him to the 17,000. But
Exactly.
his
Exactly.
rushing was 12,000.
Yes, yes. So yeah, Peterson has a massive edge and 4.6 yards a carry too. By the way, doesn't get him to the top of the list, but it gets him in the top 10 percentile for sure.
Yep, yep. So that's our number 8, both of ours. And this is the guy that now that I'm looking at it more again, yet again, I think
Hmm.
I would switch Peterson in my number 7,
Okay.
but that's okay.
Do you want to do your number seven since my eight was the same as yours?
All right, sure. My number 7, who I now think should be number 8, and Peterson should be 7, but no slight on him, is Eric Dickerson.
Dude, that's the same one I have, and I agree with you.
Really?
That's
Wow.
so funny.
Yeah, Eric Dickerson, 13,259 rushing yards, over 15,000 combined, 96 touchdowns. But I
Incredible.
was looking at it. Peterson has 30 more touchdowns, and more rushing yards, more combined yards. So why did I have Dickerson over him?
Because we saw him and we loved him. Because and
Yes.
when we were kids. And
Yep.
to me, he was the coolest guy to watch run that I've ever seen in the NFL.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah, he was smooth
Cool.
as silk.
Exactly. Exactly. Smooth son of a gun, man. And I just thought the world of this guy. He was one of my favorite players I ever saw in the NFL. Um, Oddly enough, and the reason he's not higher on this list is because they didn't use him as a receiver. But weirdly,
No.
he had he had 51 catches his rookie season, and then he had 41 at 31 years old when he was in Indy by that point. And in
Yep.
between, he was only there was a year where he had 18 catches. So
Yeah, only another one with only 6 receiving touchdowns.
okay, nice, okay, that's a magic number apparently.
Yep, 2 in a row. Both of them have 6 receiving touchdowns. Both of them just over 2,000 receiving yards, which really isn't a lot. But both of them with big rushing numbers. And obviously, Dickerson also has the single season record
And that's one of the
for
most. I mean,
rushing yards.
I guess that sounds stupid to say it's one of the most incredible seasons a running back put up because it's a record. But 379 carries, which you don't see anymore, for 2,105 yards, like you said, 14 touchdowns, 5.6 yards a carry.
The only thing I don't like about Dickerson is the fact that he doesn't want anybody to break it.
Yes, he does
He's
have
not.
a touch of the 72 Dolphins about him, doesn't he?
Yeah, like when Saquon was going for it this year, he was like everybody was saying, Do you want Saquon to break your record or whatever? And he was like, no,
Yeah,
no, I don't.
you know what? I don't mind that, Craig. I get where you're coming from, but I kind of respect that at least he's honest about it.
Yeah, he's like, I don't want anybody to break it.
Yeah, it kind of made me laugh, and I, it, I don't know how I feel about that, but he makes me laugh. And by the way, best Jerry curl ever in the NFL.
I would agree.
Damn right. He let his soul glow.
Yes, let your soul glow with the stains on the back of the couch.
That's exactly, man. That's I love it. I love it. Awesome. All
All
right, man.
right.
Anything
Well,
else on
my turn.
Dickerson?
Yeah, we're good. We both had him at 7. If we have this next guy at 6, and I bet you we do, but who's your next guy at 6?
Well, here we go. Okay. So 5 and 6 are really interchangeable. They were very similar players, actually.
Yep,
Um,
yep, yep.
and I'm curious to see who you have at 5 and who you have at 6. For me, 6 was Marshall Falk.
6 is Marshall Falk.
I can't believe that's so awesome. This was such a tough list to figure out. I can't believe we have 3 in a row that were the same at this point. That's awesome.
We're gonna have 4 in a row because I know who you're thinking about for number 5.
The way you reacted, I know you do. That's awesome. I
So
love it. So yeah, Falk, and I could maybe make a case for bumping him up a notch or two because to me, he was one of the prototypes of a new type of player that came along with that Ram offense. A running back who was catching not only because there were running backs before him that were catching 80 ball, Larry Centers and guys like that were catching 70, 80, 90 balls a season, but none of them were the bell cow. You know what I mean?
right,
So that he was the almost the I think you can make a pretty good case that he was the first of a type in the league,
and he
and
has
not
the
only that, but
record
he
for the
was
most. He has the record for the most receiving yards in a
yes, yes.
career for a running back. He has almost 7,000 receiving yards.
I mean that's beyond comprehension. It really is. I mean that's just incredible.
Yep, 136 touchdowns
Mm,
so far. That's second only to Marcus Allen on this list.
yep,
And we have a new leader in the clubhouse for yardage, total yardage, 19,154 combined rushing and receiving yards.
man,
That's
incredible.
the most so far.
Incredible. I mean, and his consistency, you know. I mean, he was great for a long, long time. You know, he had his opening of his career in Indy, and I barely saw I don't remember seeing much of him while he was in Indy, which is weird because I was hardcore at the time and I remember his name and blah blah blah. But I didn't see him once he became a Ram. It felt
Oh,
like I
then
saw him 1,000 times.
yeah, he really took off then.
Yep. I mean, he had his last season in Indy, he caught 86 catches for 908 yards. And then his first season with the Rams, he caught 87 for 1,048. And that's the season you're talking about.
Yeah, the thousand receiving and rushing, he was the best at it,
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
which is crazy to even think 1,000 receiving, 1,000 rushing.
It makes me stutter just trying to explain how it could even happen.
Yep. So why did you put this next guy ahead of him?
Man, it was just a tough, like, part of it was the touchdowns. That was probably the single biggest factor.
Yep.
Um, And they were like I said. I mean, very, very similar players. I mean, this other guy had the thousand. Had a. He didn't have the thousand season, but he did have a 1,600 yard, 100 catch season,
Yeah. Yep.
which is just as astonishing. And man, I like honestly, you could flip a coin on these two, Craig. I mean, there was the touchdowns for me that made me put this guy over the other one.
Right. And we're talking about our number 5 player is LaDainian Tomlinson.
Boom, boom.
And he had 162 touchdowns to Falk's 136.
That's
And
crazy.
rushing touchdowns 145 to 100.
Yeah, man.
He had
Yeah, he
45 more rushing touchdowns.
he was the undisputed king of fantasy for what felt like a decade. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was probably like 7 8 years, but yeah.
Yeah,
If you had the number one pick, that was who you were going him actually, and there was a time just before him when it was Falk.
exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right, man. And then the 28 touchdown season, Craig. The 28
Ugh.
rush touchdown season. Add three more receiving on that. He had a 31 touchdown season.
Unbelievable. 13,684 rushing yards, over 18,000, almost 18 and a half, 18,500 receiving yards. So a little bit less in total yardage than Falk, because Falk had that 7,000 receiving yards, but still the touchdowns. And like you said, though, you could flip a coin.
Yeah.
I Ladanian was my kid's favorite. Like my son, uh, he was a little kid. I mean, he was like 4 or 5,
That's
and that's
awesome.
when Ladanian was on top of the world. And he actually wanted to get a Ladanian Tomlinson jersey.
That's so
And
awesome. He was for it was for your kid. It was like Earl Campbell for me.
yeah, he got. I mean, he became a Cowboy fan, and he was then too. But he loved Ladanian Tomlinson, even when he was on like the Jets.
That's so awesome, man. Yeah, he managed a resurgence with the Jets, which who has a resurgence? Most people go to the Jets to die. He go
Yeah.
he, he
Before
had
that,
two
him.
seasons.
Remember Thomas Jones? He had a good resurgence with the Jets too.
That's right, because he started as a Cardinal. Good call.
Yep.
Yeah,
And was he on the Bears?
Thomas. Oh wait, yes, he was on the Bears and the Cardinals. I think he was drafted by the Cardinals, went to the Bears, and then the Jets. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, and he was good on the Jets
He
until this
was.
year.
He had a resurgence because he was people were that completely ruled him out.
Yep.
And another lesson in because the Cardinals were garbage back then, and that was a lesson in don't rule the player out because the organization's garbage.
All right.
Awesome, dude. That
Gonna
five and
go to
six thing was great.
we're
Yeah.
gonna go to number 4, and this is where we're gonna differ. I'm almost positive I know who you have at number 4,
Okay.
but you might be surprised at who I have. So give me your number 4.
All right, man. And listen, this is this is a toughie, but and this guy you could make a case. You could make a case for this guy being at least three or even two or one.
Well,
But I went
I
four.
will say, the next four, my four guys that I have listed here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I
Mm-hmm.
saw lists today and last night where each one of them was number one,
Right
at
on.
least once,
Okay.
at least once. Number one was number one a few times, but the other three were there was definitely lists I saw where they were all listed at number one,
Right on.
as
And you
number
can make
two
a
and all.
case for the guy who was my number four. And the big case would be the rushing touchdown number. And that's Emmett Smith.
I knew you were going to have him at 4.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, he's my number 3.
Right on. And I'm curious who you have at four below him. That's awesome because you can make the case all the way around. His numbers that he accumulated during his career are astonishing.
Well, this is the first guy that we're going to have over 20,000 combined yards.
Yeah. And I forgot
21,000,
how good a receiver he was.
21,579 combined yards, and obliterates everybody with the touchdowns at 175.
Yeah, man. Yeah, his touchdowns are insane.
And
Absolutely insane.
164 rushing yards, 20 more than Ladainian, and he was the next one. Yeah,
Yeah,
20.
man. It's
Yeah, just ridiculous. And of course, the 18,355 rushing yards, 3,224 receiving, another 11 touchdowns receiving. I love that. Obviously, I love them. He was right in my peak Cowboys years, obviously,
oh
and
no
I
doubt,
like
yeah.
the fact that he was well rounded too. I mean, like he was a good blocker. He picked up the blitz better than any running back I ever saw.
Yeah, he was awesome, and he was a tough sob. Like people try to detract from him because of the great offensive line. I don't do that. No way. That's he played. You play for who you play. I'm not detracting from Barkley this year because the Eagles have a great offensive line. You know what I mean?
Right.
And um, I remember a game against the Eagles where, and you might remember the specific injury. I think it was a shoulder or a shoulder blade or something. Something was broken on him, and he could barely move one of his arms. and he ran for like 87 yards against the Eagles. And that was the
That
freaking,
was that was the week after he actually did it against the Giants.
that is that what it was? Okay, I didn't
He
remember
did it.
the
He got tackled against the Giants and went down on his shoulder, and then started getting up, not moving his arm,
mm.
and he stayed in the game, and he ended up rushing for like 160 something yards and 4 touchdowns.
That's insane. That
And
is
it was
my
the
lasting
last game
image.
of the yeah, it was the last game of the year. Sorry to
No, no, no.
clinch the division.
I love it, man. That's my lasting image of Evan Smith because that he was just, he was everything you want in a running back. He was
Yeah,
tough. He had some spectacular to him. His yards per carry were less than anybody else that in the top four, which is why I put him at four. That's the only case I could make. It's the one thing I can point to. But
yep,
but that's it because he played so long.
yeah,
His
and
he just
he was durable. He never missed a game because of injury until he got to the Cardinals, and that no one really even cares about that. But um,
right.
he was definitely durable. He did not come out of games. He definitely carried the load. He touched the ball 20 times a game, at least every single game.
Yeah, he was a beast. Man. He was an absolute beast. I mean, he led the league in carries three times.
Yeah, and these guys now would have their jaw on the floor if they saw his carries.
I don't even.
360 in a season.
Oh, I mean, it's that's when they were using running backs. Like, hey, if you're the guy, you get 25 to 35 carries a game if all goes well, unless we're playing from behind that week, and that's that.
But if you can catch the ball, you'll still be involved.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Man, incredible. Yeah, he was awesome. He was freaking awesome, no doubt about it. So
All
that
right.
leaves the question then: who did you have at four? Right?
Yes. It is another person, and the only two people that have a combined 20,000 yards rushing and receiving in the entire league, not just running backs. The only two people that have 20,000 combined yards are Emmett Smith and Walter Payton.
Boom. Yep. And Walter Payton is this is a little sidetrack before we dig heavy into Walter because I want to get into him, another one of my favorites. But do you know that he is number two in the NFL all time total yardage? And do you have any idea who he's number two behind? Because I wanted to bring this up at some point, and it's fascinating.
Total yardage?
Yep. And to to give you a little bit of a help, that includes kickoff returns
Okay, I
and
was
punt
going to say because
returns.
he's behind Emmett in total yardage.
No, I have him. Are you looking at weird stats again?
No, I'm looking at Emmett Smith has 21,579
And
total
Walter Payton
yards
has
and 21,000
21,803.
21,264.
21,803 I have.
We gotta get to the bottom of this.
That's crazy.
If I had known that, I might have put him ahead of him. One of the reasons why I had him ahead of him is because of
Yeah, that's why
those
I have
yards.
Walter ahead of Emmett because not he had the total yards and he had more yards per carry. That's the only reason I put him ahead of him, or I would have gone with Emmett. Now I'm on Stat News again, and last week when you had your Witten stats wrong, it was the Stat News was right. So I'm going to assume that this is okay, but I'm not going to verify it until you tell me you find something else here.
All right. So I have rushing yards at 16,726.
Dun, dun, dun. Yes. Wait, hold on one sec here. Yes.
I have receiving yards. What do you have receiving yards?
4,538.
Right. I do too. So 16,726 plus 4,538 equals 21,264.
He must have returned some kicks.
It's got to be the kickoff return yardage
Yep. There you go.
because he definitely has less combined receiving and rushing yards.
Right on. Right on.
But regardless, all purpose yards, there you go.
Bam. So yeah, so the number one guy over him, Brian Mitchell. Do you
Well,
remember
he
Brian
was,
Mitchell?
yeah, I mean, he was returning kicks like crazy.
Yep. And the wild thing is, he has 23,330 total yards, 1,967 rushing yards, and 2,336 receiving yards. He was an awesome player, man, but they just never like he averaged 5.1 yards a carry, but they just never. He was in that era when small guys they just determined they just looked at him and said, he's never going to get the ball more than 5 times a game. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
they're the dreaded label of they're gadget players.
And boom! Oh my god, I forgot about that term after all these years, Craig.
The first time I ever heard that was when they were talking about Dave Meggett.
Dave Meggett, yes.
They were
Holy
talking,
crap!
yeah, they would say he's a gadget player, and I every time I heard that ever since, I'm like, that means they don't like him too
Yeah,
much.
that's
That's not a term
yes.
of endearment. That's a term of you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, dude. That means yeah, you'll never see more than 10 touches a game. Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, shoot. Well, let's dig into Walter, man, because I mean,
Well,
sweetness, one of
yeah,
the best of all time.
absolutely. I mean, and a great guy too. I had a couple buddies got to meet him. He was so nice. He's really nice, and just everything about him. And there's a reason why it's called the Walter Payton Man of the Year,
Yes. Yes.
and it's also one of the reason why that award is important to a lot of people. Like the
Yeah,
people
because
that
he was
win that
everybody knows
want
what a
to
great
win that
guy he was.
award.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No doubt
but
about it,
yeah,
man.
on the field, almost unparalleled. I mean, basically, he broke the record before first and held it for a while. I just wish he was around when Emmett broke it.
I know, man. That's just such a shame because he died so young.
Yep, it was rough. But
It was
anyway,
really
yeah,
sad. But
yeah,
dude, I mean, and well rounded. He did everything. He caught passes. He ran. He did the whole freaking deal. He had longevity. He had everything you want. And by the way, he did it. Of let me speak. Yeah, him and one other guy that we're going to get to did it with really pathetic teams for most of their careers. Now, of course, Walter was on that great '85 team,
right.
but he started in 1975.
Yeah,
That
he
was a
he
lot of
was
There's
that
a
was
lot
one
of
of the
really bad
Cardinals.
Bear teams leading up to that.
Yeah, but hey, he ended up with over 20,000 combined yards and 125 touchdowns.
Incredible. Incredible. He was 32 years old the year the Bears went to the Super Bowl. And he rushed for 1,551 yards, 9 touchdowns, caught 49 passes for 483 yards, and another 2 touchdowns.
Oh man,
That's incredible.
they would
Incredible.
he would never even get a chance to do that now because if he was 32 years old, they're just never even going to give him the ball enough to
Right.
do that.
Yeah. They won't even give it to 25-year-olds that much anymore.
Well, that's true.
Oh man, but yeah, man. Listen, I didn't realize that Stat News was counting. I didn't. Well, I guess I did because Brian Mitchell was on the list, but I didn't think about that Walter Payton ever returned a kick. So my reasoning for putting him up was total yards, which was what they're with the proper math without the kick returns, they're within
It's
100 yards of each other, right?
no, it's a couple hundred. It's
Couple hundred.
21,579 for Emmett and 21,264 for Walter.
Okay, and then Walter had the yards per carry. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but Emmett had 50 more touchdowns
Yeah, and that's not an insignificant number.
and
Yeah,
54
man.
more rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, you
But
can make. I mean, you can make a real good case for Emmett over Walter, but I'm going to
it
stick
doesn't
with it.
matter. There's so many. I saw a list where Emmett was number one. I saw a list where Walter was number one. I saw a list where Emmett was number nine. I saw a list where Walter was like number seven. They're just all over the place. I never saw this much diversity on any list we've done for baseball or football where there's so many different people in that top 10. It was crazy doing this list. Like
I
I said,
completely agree.
the guy I was talking about earlier was Franco Harris.
Oh yeah,
Franco Harris um, didn't make my list, but he was like number 8 on one of the lists. And then I saw a top 25 running back ever, and Franco Harris wasn't on the list.
yeah. Which
For goodness sake.
And you know that like Franco Harris at one point was considered a top like three running back of all time when we were kids.
Yeah, he had
Um,
14,000 yards and 100 touchdowns.
yeah, and he was great, and he's on my honorable mention. But I was a little surprised that he was, like I was like, where is Franco going to fit in here? And there's just so many good running backs, so many good running backs. This was hard, and I'm with you, man. The lists are all over the place, and yeah, you can make really good justifications for a lot of what we're talking about. I can't, it's hard to fathom a world where Emmett Smith is not in your at least top five with those touchdowns. But
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The guy, he's got the most combined rushing and receiving yards in history,
yeah,
and
and the
and
most
the
touch.
most rushing touchdowns ever,
Yeah,
and the most combined touchdowns ever.
yeah. It's
So how's
tough
he not
to
on? How's he not a top five? That doesn't make any sense.
exactly. If he's not top five, I don't think the list. That's where these like I think people still hang on to that. Well, he played with such a good line thing. Horse crap. His line in Carol in the for the Cardinals. He goes to Arizona, has an injury plagued first season, only played like 5 games. Then he hung in and played like 14 or 15 games the next year. Played for a Cardinal team that stunk and almost got 1,000 yards at 30 whatever freaking 6 7 years old he was. So yeah,
Yep.
don't give me that crap.
Yep.
He was a,
All
he
right.
was a badass.
Let's. We know who the number one and two are, but before we give the actual order that we have them in,
Hmm.
you want to go through some honorable mentions? We just did
Oh, good
Franco.
call. Good call. Okay, well I'll give you what I think has to be the one of the two most glaring omissions from this list for both of us.
And
And
I bet you I know exactly who you're going to say.
I bet you know which two I'm talking about, don't you?
Probably, yeah.
All right, well, I'll give you one of them and you can give me the other then, or I'll give you the other one when it's my turn again. All right, let's see, I'll flip a coin between the two. Let's go Frank Gore.
Frank Gore. Yep, that's one of them.
Frank Gore's, if my stats are correct, which I'm going to double check right now, in the stats that include kickoff returns, Frank Gore is number 4 all time.
Yeah, Frank Gore. People don't realize that when he was sticking around, he was like the old man on the team
Yep,
in the league, really. But he just kept turning out good years, even though he was at that age. He was still having good seasons. It was incredible, and he has
incredible.
one of the greatest runs I've ever seen.
Which one was that?
The I think it's a 98-yard touchdown run against the Jets. I want to say where he just stiff arms the whole team and all the way down the field.
Well, I'm gonna look it up after we're done today because I don't remember that off the top of my head. That's awesome. I'm gonna pull it up while we're talking so I remember to watch it. That's awesome.
um, yeah, Frank Gore right there. He's one. Um, the other one, I'm assuming this guy's on the list because his totals are ridiculous. 17,430 yards. That's more than one, two, three, four guys that are in my top 10. He has
Yeah.
more yards than all of them. And
Yep.
that is Curtis Martin.
That's the other guy. Boom. Those were the two toughest guys to leave off the list for me because of those freaking numbers. And they were not just accumulators, they were great players the whole way through. They were both very underrated, even in their primes. And here I am leaving them off a list. I feel kind of jerky about it, but
Yeah, but who are
they're
you going to
they're
take
both
off?
yeah. I mean they are number Gore is 4 and Martin is 6 all time in yardage in the NFL
Yeah,
in
and he
total
had
yards.
100 touchdowns, and like I said, 1,700 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible.
There's actually a third guy that's glaring like these two.
Well, I have one in mind. I'm curious if it's
Thurman
who you're.
Thomas.
Oh, that's a good one too. Okay. Yeah.
He had 16,500 yards.
Yep.
He was. I
Absolutely.
mean, there was a point where Thurman Thomas was right there with Emmett and Barry for like first running back off the board in drafts.
Yeah, no doubt, man. No, that's a great call. Yeah, he
Irwin had
really
some
was.
big years, and he received too. He had 4,500 receiving yards.
Yeah. Isn't that's fascinating? Well, now and listen, I'm with you 100% on Thurman. Great, freaking incredible player, and one of the key pieces to the Bills team that could have been a dynasty, but instead was a sad footnote. Um,
Yes.
you know who has now? Maybe this guy. Hold on a second. Let me check this. You know who's right there with him in the total yard thing? He's a little behind. 16. Yeah, but you know who's close? And I didn't even consider for this list? Tiki Barber.
Yeah, Tiki Barber. I didn't consider him for this list either. He wasn't on anybody's list that I saw, so I didn't think of him. But yeah, Tiki Barber's got what he's got 15,000, 14,000
He's
combined.
15. Yeah, like 15 and a half ish.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
his yards per carry are one of the biggest numbers on this list, other than a couple of the people we haven't gotten to yet.
Wow,
4.7 yards a carry.
Tiki.
Wow. So yeah, there's oh man, that's a wild one. You know who else is the one other name I want to mention real quick? Two other names. Uh that I didn't put on my honorable mentions, but are just I'm only mentioning because they were surprising to me that they were on the total yardage list. And again, this includes kickoff returns, so that's why they're on here. Herschel Walker.
Oh yeah, he did a lot of kickoff returning,
Herschel
especially
Walker
in.
ended his career in Philly as the kickoff returner.
Yeah, yep.
And the other one, Darren Sproles.
Darren Sproles. Where's Devin Hester? He's not on the list.
They must not get enough yardage from returns. They must need the positional yardage.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, because Hester. What was the human? You remember the human joystick played for Kansas City? I always forget his name in the Dick Vermeil.
Oh,
What was his name? He was my
ah,
favorite kick returner ever. Was that guy?
not Devin Hester. It was the other one. Ah, I can't remember.
I'm gonna find it because it's gonna drive me freaking crazy. The human joystick, Dante Hall.
Yes, Dante Hall was so good.
He was so good. He was so good. I loved watching that guy return kicks. You legitimately felt like same with Hester, but Hester was spectacular, and I loved him too. But there was a little wiggle to the human joystick that was something special, and you
Yeah.
legitimately felt like every time he got a kickoff, there was a real chance he was going to score a touchdown. I used to draft the Chiefs defense every year when he was the kickoff returner just because of him.
Yeah, he's there's only a select handful of players, and I'll tell you what, it's a small list, and I'm talking all time.
Hmm.
That every time they get the ball, there's a chance that they'll score on a kickoff return.
Yes, yes,
Deion
and he
Sanders gave me that feeling for the Cowboys.
100%.
Yep, every time he caught it, I'm like, there's a chance right now that he could score.
100%. Every time he picked off a pass, which it was rare because they didn't throw it at him, but
Right.
every time he picked off a pass, returned a punt, you felt like, oh my god. It was the same with Deshaun Jackson in Philly.
Yep. Oh, so yeah, handful of guys, but man, talk about exciting.
Oh, I love it, dude. That's awesome. That was a fun little sidetrack there.
Yeah,
Um, Now I have some more honorable mentions. I assume you do as well.
I do.
All right, you want to go next? You want me to?
I'm going to throw out a name here. His yardage is only 10,000, almost 11. But the thing is, he's had a disproportionate number of touchdowns that I did not
Mm.
realize, and it's Sean Alexander.
Oh, good
He
call.
won an MVP one year too.
Yep.
How he has only 9,000 rushing yards, but 100 rushing touchdowns.
That's a great call. I did not put him on the list because I didn't think about that, but that's a great call. That
How does
really
he
is.
have 100 rushing touchdowns? He only played like 7 years or something,
He
or maybe
I
eight
gotta pull
years.
I gotta pull him up while we're talking. But he
Can you
was
just yeah? Can you go through his years of touchdowns?
yeah, he had a super short prime, but it was spectacular.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right, I got him. Let's see what we got here. So the MVP season, he ran for 1,880 yards and had 27 rushing touchdowns.
Jeez.
um, let's see if he caught.
I got he caught for 12. He caught 12 more, so his total touchdowns is 112.
Okay. Yeah, man. Like his from 2001 to 2005, it was only 5 years, but that's about as good a 5 years as you're going to see.
Yeah, can you just run through the touchdowns?
Yep. So in 01, 14, then 16, 14, 16, 27. And those are only rushing touchdowns because of the way Pro Football Reference lists it. If then you can add 2, 2, 2, 4, and 1 to those numbers. And then
Wow.
then he started getting hurt and he was out of the league within 3 years. He only played 10, 13, and 4 games the next 3 years, but he still added 7 and 5 touchdowns in 2 of those years, and then the last year he
So
didn't
he
hit
was
anything.
like a touchdown machine more than anything.
An absolute touchdown machine. He was like, you remember, what was it, Zach Moss and Tyrone Wheatley for the Raiders,
Yes, I remember Tyrone Wheatley.
and they would vulture Charlie Garner's touchdowns all the time, and and he was like those guys, but he also got the ball all the way down the field too.
Yep, yep.
That's a
Yeah,
great
and he was
call.
also kind of like a bigger back as well.
Yeah, he was a real solid guy, and I remember he was an interesting guy. He was a little bit of an odd duck for the NFL, not in a bad way, but he was like he didn't seem like a I live, sleep, eat, breathe football kind of guy, which bothers some people. Never bothered me. I always found him interesting.
Yep, yep. I agree.
That's a great one.
So who do
All
you
right,
have? Give me another name.
all right, man. I'm going to the Wayback Machine, and that'd be Gale Sayers. Speaking of short primes, I can't put him on a top 10 list just because the prime was too short. But you watch highlights, you read the stats, and man, you wish the dude could have played for another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, because I have him on my honorable mentions list as well.
Oh, do you?
Um,
Cool.
yeah, like you said, maybe what was it, 3, 4 years? 3 years total? 4 years?
I'm pulling it up now just to, it
Six
was,
thousand 6,000 yards and 48 touchdowns. He
yeah,
rushed
he
for
played
49.56.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons, and he was playing in the 14 game a season era, and he only played one of those seasons. He only played 9 games. The rest he played most of the season. And then his last 2 seasons, he only played 2 games apiece, and he retired at 28.
Well, because he destroyed his knee, and the technology and the procedure wasn't there. An
Oh yeah,
ACL, an ACL tear then was the end of your career.
yeah, you're done. You're done.
That's what
Yep.
he did.
Yeah, man. I remember the worst thing I ever saw injury wise in football, man, was I don't know if you would remember this guy because it wasn't super well known, but you remember when the vet for the Eagles was the worst stadium in the world for
Yeah, when
injuries?
it was just like fuzzy cement. That thing
Yeah,
that was a thin little
exactly. That's
thin
perfect,
little
and that
surface.
might be the name of my next band, Fuzzy Cement.
Yeah, that
um,
was the worst artificial turf in history.
I don't recommend looking this up because I'm not a guy that likes to look at injuries personally. But if you like seeing that kind of thing, look up Wendell Smallwood, who is a real up and coming player for the Bears back in the day, or was it Wendell Davis? Wendell Smallwood played for the Eagles. It was Wendell Davis. Sorry, and he was just running down the field. Nobody was around him, and that old turf monster, as they called it, bit him, and he went down like a shot and tore everything in both knees, never to be heard from again. And I've never felt more bad for a guy ever because it was just ridiculous. And that was this gambling addict Leonard Toes who let that stadium go so far bad, and it cost the guy's career. So it was,
Yeah,
it was
I remember
brutal.
one of the last years of the vet. Brian Billick would refuse to play.
I was
I
going
think
to
it was
bring that up. That's awesome. You
I think
remember
it's a
that. And
preseason game. He refused to play because the carpet was actually literally coming up in parts, and there was literally exposed cement in some areas. Like,
the only surprising thing about that to me, Craig, was that it was the first time it happened. That field.
well, yeah,
I
I
actually,
remember that. I remember he's like, "Well, I'm not bringing my players on this field."
dude, and good for Brian Billick. In fact, there was the typical Philly contingent that booed his ass because they're going to back anything Philly, but there was a smarter contingent of Eagle fans in the stadium that day cheering Brian Billick for doing that and forcing attention on how garbage that field was. Um,
Yeah.
I actually played on that field in 1986.
Is
I
it
think it
as
would have been 86.
was it as
My
bad
little
as
league.
you heard?
Yeah, well, luckily I got off unscathed. I didn't tear anything, but my little league team won some tournament, and as a prize, we got to take infield practice before a Phillies game, and I got to meet Mike Schmidt and Von Hayes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, walking on that field, it was a summer day, and it was just like I've never heard a better description: fuzzy cement. It felt like I was playing stickball on a street.
Yeah, it was just a thin little carpet over
Yeah,
over concrete.
totally, man. It was like throwing a yoga mat on a sidewalk. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it, man. That's awesome. All right, you have any others you want to mention? I still have a couple more, and I'll make them a little quicker here.
Okay. Well, I had him. I have here. Let's see. We did him. We did him. I have three more, but we'll go quicker. And one is just a mention. But the other three, this guy was in control of the league for a time, but again, another short time, and that's Terrell Davis.
Yep, he's on mine. That's a great call.
He had like maybe a 4 or 5 year run where he was the best running back in the league, and those two Super Bowl runs were fantastic. The first one was because of him. The whole reason why they won was because of him. And
Completely agree.
yep, and he ended up with 7,600 rushing yards, 8,800, almost 8,900 total yards, 65 touchdowns. Again, another guy who just cut it short. And good for him for his health and everything, obviously.
Yeah,
But definitely would have liked to see him play a little longer and have a longer peak because then he'd be on this list probably because he was really, really good.
he was awesome, dude. His peak was 4 seasons. It was 95 through 98. And 98, by the way, he was one of those 2,000-yard running backs. He had 2,008 yards and 21 touchdowns in 1998. Just incredible. By his age 27 season, he was down to 4 games and ran for 211 yards. Then he had a bit. He played another season that was exactly like that almost, and then he came back and had a half decent season at 29, ran for 700 yards, and that was it. But man, that 4 years, man, it was very Gale Sayers-ish. Very, I mean,
Yeah,
their careers really parallel each other.
right. 1,100, 1,500, 1,700, 2,000.
Mm, I mean,
4 years in a
incredible,
row.
man,
And
incredible.
and then nothing.
What's maybe even more amazing, Craig, as I'm looking at that 2,000-yard season, is he had 392 carries and didn't lead the league.
Yeah, because it's not in bold.
Yeah, exactly. We're obviously looking at the exact same thing, and that blows my mind. I would love to know who led the league that year. They must have had
What
over
year was it?
400 carries.
98?
98. Yep,
Emmett probably wouldn't have been there.
it could have.
No,
Well, yeah,
I don't know. Probably not. But anyway, Terrell Davis was awesome.
incredible, man. Yeah, that's a great. I had him too, and I'm glad you did. That's awesome. Okay. Um, Now I want to go back. I'm going to do a 2-for-1 here just to go in the Wayback Machine for a second. And these guys, I wanted to put at least one of them on the list, but I just couldn't do it because technically they're called fullbacks. And this is one of the things that makes this list difficult when you try and include old time guys pre 1960 or so, is because a lot of times they called guys that were their main running backs, they called them fullbacks.
Yeah.
And two of those guys, all timers both, are Marion Motley and one of my favorite names in the history of any sport, Bronco Nagurski.
Bronco. I know Bronco Nagurski. I don't know the other guy actually, but I know
Okay,
Bronco.
well, let's talk about Bronco first, since you're familiar. I'm pulling him up right now on reference. I read about this guy when I was young. and it just, the name caught me. Everything about this guy caught me. He played from 1930 to 1943, and I believe, if I remember right, he was a Bear most of that time, all of that time.
Yeah, and he
Um,
was a tough SOB.
Tough, like what he was all pro, 4-time all pro, by the way, and that's means 10 times more than Pro Bowls because that means you were the best in your position at the league that in the league that year. Um, 3-time NFL champ, Hall of Famer, and the numbers aren't eye popping by any measure because he was only getting, what was it? The most carries he ever got in a season was 128.
Right.
But
Well,
he was,
real quick,
yeah,
the fullback position obviously has changed. That's why they call running backs halfbacks
that's right. That's right.
because those are the fullbacks, and the running backs are the halfbacks.
That's right. Good call.
They're smaller.
Excellent. Excellent call, man. Yeah, good. The other thing I wanted to mention about Bronco real quick is his size. Now, I mentioned the years he played, right? I mean, I owned a house that was built in the early 1900s a few years back, and the first year I lived there, I had a continuous scab on my top of my head because I cracked my head walking through the doorways of that house because people were just smaller back then, right? I'm 6'2". The house was not built for anybody over 5'11". And now Bronco Nagurski playing in the 30s mostly was 6'2", 226.
Yeah,
That's a big running back in the league now.
that's a big running back. That's for sure.
And the other thing I want to say about him real quick is, and we talk about this a lot in baseball, is he was a war guy. He actually stepped away in 37 and didn't return until he came back from the war in 1943.
Oh wow, so he missed a big chunk.
His last season before that he was 29. The next time he played, he was 35.
Wow, he's probably on his way out. How long did he play after that?
1 year.
Oh, well, there you go. He just wanted to come back for one last time.
Yep, he just did, and he averaged. He didn't give him the ball much, but he averaged 5.3 yards a carry at that age. So there's Bronco. I won't. That's enough on Bronco, but I love the. He was one of my favorite guys to read about growing up. Now, Marion Motley. Okay, Marion Motley was part of those Colts teams. The most famous Colts teams ever. The Johnny Unitas.
Yep, yep.
If I can, where's Motley? Oh shoot, I spelled it wrong. Sorry, bear with me one sec. Mott. Oh, is his real name Parnell? Why can't I find Marion Motley, Craig? Holy crap, I thought I pulled this up. Shoot. All right. I'll find it. We'll talk about him in a minute, but let me give you another guy in the meantime since I'm not prepared. Two more modern guys that you could make a good case for, and I'll give you the guy first that had another similar sort of really short, spectacular prime. Jamal Lewis.
Oh yeah.
Jamal
Jamal
Lewis was
Lewis.
a
Does he still hold the
monster.
record for most yards in a game?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
No, he had it.
You're absolutely right. He had it. It was I can't even remember the number, but it was an insane number.
Because I
Uh,
remember when he broke it because I sat him in fantasy that day.
oh no, that'll stick it in your brain forever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I was stacked at running back. He hadn't been playing that great, so I sat him, and he breaks the all-time rushing record on my bench.
Wow. Oh, that's so painful. I feel I've been there with those kind of things, and it sucks. Oh man. Well, Jamal comes into the league, gets 1,364 yards his rookie season. Then he doesn't play the whole next season because he got hurt. Now the next actually his prime was longer than I remember. Actually, from '02 to '8, he was over 1,000 yards every season except one where he missed a game and only ended up with 906. And he's another one of these guys on the 2,000 yard list. He had that magical season. I think it had to be that season with that game too, where he had 2,066 yards. He wasn't a monster touchdown guy like some of those guys in that era, like Emmett and some of the other guys we talked about. But that season he had 14 touchdowns and he still ended up with 58 total. Not a monster number, but solid. And he ended up with over 10,000 rushing yards. So, he was that Ravens team. I really enjoyed watching that Ravens team play because they were a throwback, and he was the bell cow man on a throwback team that didn't want Trent Dilfer to throw the ball more than 3 times a game if they could avoid it.
The Brian Billick team.
Exactly. Another guy we've talked about who I mean we can't figure out. I'll never understand how that was his last coaching job in the NFL. Nobody can explain that to me, and I'll never even I can't imagine an explanation I would accept.
Me neither. Me neither. Is that the end of your list? Or do you have somebody else?
I have one more modern guy, and I'm still trying to find Marion Motley. So okay, the last modern guy, and I'll make it quick. The bus, Jerome Bettis.
Oh yeah.
Now he doesn't crack these total yardage lists because he hardly ever caught a pass, but that dude was a monster. And I had as much fun watching that guy run as anybody. His yards per carry are lower than anybody on the list at 3.9, but that's what he was built to do. And he did it. And he did it. And he had a couple acts. He had the Rams and the Steelers portion of his career, and he was really good with both. So the bus was somebody I wanted to mention too. And then last but not least, I got my Marion Motley stuff finally, and it's worth getting because here's one of the astonishing things about Marion Motley: 5.7 yards a carry. Craig. Uh oh, did I lose you,
Sorry.
Craig?
Just for a second. Sorry about that.
Oh no, that's cool because I just got worried that my phone did something and I was talking to
No,
myself for
no.
2
I
minutes.
heard you. I heard you. I accidentally hit mute.
Oh, all good then, all good. No worries,
So I
no
was
worries.
talking and didn't realize that I was muted. Anyway, 5.7. You said?
5.7 yards a carry, Craig.
Yeah, that's insane. How big was he?
He was oh, and I was wrong. I had the wrong dynasty in my head for Mary Motley. It wasn't the Colts with Unitas. It was the Cleveland Browns with Otto Graham.
Oh, geez, that's way back.
Yeah, he was Jim Brown before Jim Brown.
Yeah.
Um, he played from, and check this out, man. He started playing, and I don't know the story here. I don't know if it because he started in 1946. So it seems reasonable to guess he was in World War II, but I don't know that. But he didn't start playing professional football until he was 26 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah, and he walked into the league and averaged 8.2 yards a carry. 71 carries for 601 yards.
Gee.
That's crazy. And then for the next couple seasons, he averaged 6.1 yards a carry. The best season he ever had statistically would probably be looks like 48 when he had 157 carries for 964 yards. And also
That's a
caught
hell
13.
of yards per carry too.
Yeah, he also averaged 14.8 yards a catch on 13 catches for 192 yards. So he was if he was playing in the 12 game a season era. And if he if he had more games to play, had started younger, he would be way up on this list. But I had to mention him because those numbers just pop off the page.
Yep, yep. All right, I got one more guy, and then that
Love
mention.
it.
I'll do the mention first. The mention, real quick, is just Bo Jackson.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely.
The
Would has a
numbers are nowhere near anybody else, but further, there was a time that 1 year, or maybe 2 years, he was special. He was exciting, man.
incredible. And listen, if it wasn't for baseball and the broken hip, there's a chance that dude could have ended up number one on this list.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to mention him,
Love
and
it.
now I'm going to move on to my last guy on the list, and that's John Riggins.
Oh, I love Rigo. Nice.
Yeah, he's got the numbers are there. He's got 13,442 combined yards, over 11,000 rushing yards, and 116 touchdowns. The numbers
He
are there. I saw a
he
list.
should have been on my list. Yeah, that's a great
I saw a
call.
list where he was like number 6 or something crazy.
Yeah, he should have been on my list. I don't know why he didn't. I just think I forgot to write him down because he's absolutely incredible. And talk about second acts.
Yeah, I tell you, that fourth down where it was a 4th and 1 in the Super Bowl, and it was like from the 12-yard line, and he ran it all the way in.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's
And
the
the
play
50-yarder in the Super Bowl.
yeah, that's the play I remember more than anything
Me
of John
too.
Riggins' career. That Super Bowl where he ran it in 4th and 1, back when they weren't going for it on 4th and 1 all the time
Yes, correct.
because they would actually get stopped.
Yep.
Not like today, but 4th and 1, and he ran. I think it was like 20 yards, maybe 15, 20 yards, something like that, and he went all the way. It was just fantastic. Even though
That's
I
so awesome.
was not a Redskin fan at all,
A same, you and me both, and
but I liked him. I did like him.
I did too. They had a really cool back. They had I forget who the guy was that was kind of the lightning to his thunder, but they had a real cool backfield back then. Man, it's like the Giants had what was his name?
Otis Anderson, OJ
Otis
Anderson.
Anderson, and was it? Oh, it was Joe Washington.
Oh, okay.
You remember Joe Washington?
Yeah, he was kind of like uh,
A gadget
a
back.
gadget running back. Yes.
And he played for Washington, and I think he was the Jets also. But yeah, that's oh man, I don't know. That's a little side tangent there, but great call on Riggins, man. I really like that one. He should have been on my honorable mentions, and he just slipped through the cracks somehow on me. That's a great one.
So that's it, man. I got through mine. You got through yours, and
I got through
yeah,
mine.
we had a lot of similarities.
We did, and I'm curious to see where we land on number 2 and 1 if we ended up the same there or not.
Yeah. So I'm assuming we are going to, because after careful deliberation, I ended up going with the one that was the consensus one that I thought I was going to end up with. I tried to
Mm-hmm.
make a case for Barry,
Uh huh.
but Barry ends up at number 2.
Right there with you on that. And yes, I went into it with as an open mind as I could give myself, trying to see if I could knock the guy who was going to be number one off the pedestal, and I just couldn't do it. So if anybody was going to do it, it was going to be Barry, because Barry is the most spectacular running back I ever saw play.
Yep. Without question, uh, make something out of nothing. That's for sure.
Incredible, and he did it with garbage.
Make chicken salad out of chicken shit.
Absolutely, the two best quarterbacks he ever played with were Scott Mitchell and Rodney Peete.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
18,190 yards, 109 touchdowns, over 15,000 rushing yards, 99 touchdowns. And just said he turned what, 30, and he was like, I'm done. That was
yeah,
it.
man. He's like later. Yeah,
And
he
never
played the
even
third.
gave a hint that he might be coming back. Never once.
Never once. He never wavered. That guy was, and still and forever will be his own man. That guy doesn't give a crap about any bullshit opinions. He's going to do what he thinks is right for him and good for him. Got to respect it. He did so much playing for a team. Listen, my Eagles, the after in the irony of ironies, the one time Barry Sanders makes the playoffs, the Eagles beat them. I think it was 56-7 or something.
Oh, wow.
I'll find it. But
Well,
and guess who the
he beat
quarter?
he beat the Cowboys one year in the playoffs.
That's right. I'm sorry. I knew he made it more than that. I shouldn't have said that. The one I meant the one time that with Scott Mitchell, because guess who the Eagles quarterback was when they laid that number on him? Rodney Peete.
Oh, even better. Symmetry.
Unbelievable. And they took Barry right out of the game, and he was a complete non-factor because of the huge lead. But it was just I would say that to just try and hammer home the point of how amazing it is that he did what he did for an organization. His coach was Wayne Fonts.
Yeah, as dysfunctional an organization as you can get.
I don't remember a coach that, except for maybe Rich Kotite, who
Yeah,
was made more fun of than Wayne Fonts.
he's always the butt of everybody's joke. Rich Kotite. Whenever you're comparing a coach and you want to, show how bad he is, just compare him to Rich Kotite, and everybody
That's
knows.
And that's what happens when you forget to laminate your plays and the rain ruins your play sheet. That's what happened to Rich Kotite.
Oh my God.
Oh, I love it. So that is how spectacular Barry Sanders was. that he overcame all of that to become number two on this list. You can make a case for him at number one. I would,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And again, the guy we're going to get to in a second here, I never got to see play. This is the best guy I ever saw play.
Agreed. And you're right. The guy we're going to get to, Jim Brown, is our number one, both of us.
Boom.
And yeah, he puts up he dominated the league like no other back ever did.
He really did. And that's, again, like we've talked about a lot in the baseball ones. When I'm trying to differentiate, I look for dominance in an era. And he had that in spades.
Yes. Yep. I mean, the numbers are right there too. 126 touchdowns.
Exactly. And think about this, Craig. His first, wait, I have it written down. His first 4 seasons in the NFL were 12 game seasons. His last 5 were 14 gamers.
Yeah, and he put up these kind of numbers with 126 touchdowns, over 14,000, almost 15,000 yards.
In
Yeah.
freaking. And he walked from the game at the same, I think at the same age or a year younger than Barry.
Yeah, he was 29, I think.
I think, yep, 29. I mean, it's astonishing what this guy did. Let me run some. I made 5 astonishing notes, one of which we discussed with the 12 and 14 game season. So 4 quick astonishing notes about Jim Brown. He is the only player in the history of the league to average 100 rushing yards a game.
Yep,
104.3. He
crazy.
played all 118 games of his career. He never missed a game.
Yep.
He retired early to become an actor. His first movie was The Dirty Dozen, which is an all-time classic. And he's became known as the first black Hollywood action hero.
Yeah, and then he became a big time activist too.
Big time activist. Big, I mean, just he was sitting down with the leaders of the Blood and the Crips. I remember in the '80s. Like he was doing, like he did stuff that made a difference in the world. You know what I mean? He really did. Um, and then the other determining factor in this, and to why he's at the top of this list, highest yards per carry of all time at 5.2.
5.2.
Yeah. You know who number 2 is, by the way? But number 3 is Barry at 5.0. You know who number 2 is? Now, he's currently active, and I doubt he's going to get out of his career with the same with that number intact. But right now, and he's been in the league for a while,
Derrick Henry.
great guess, incorrect. And that would have been my guess. The answer, do you want to take another guess before I tell you?
So is it Saquon?
Nope, another great guess.
Ah,
Those are the
jeez.
2 most sensible guesses you could have made. Those are the ones I would have made, but they are incorrect.
And he's been in the league a while.
I'd say at least 6, 7 years minimum.
Jeez, I don't know. You might as well just tell me.
Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb. Wow,
Nick Chubb is at 5.1 yards a carry for his career as we speak.
that is surprising.
Isn't that something?
Wow.
We're going to have to reevaluate Nick Chubb when he retires.
Yeah, yeah. Holy crap.
Uh-huh. So yeah, that's my Jim Brown stuff there, and I'm with you. Number 1, I was curious to see how I was gonna, because I felt like he was the clear number 1 in my head when we talked about it that one time. But then I was like, well, you know what? I mean, Barry was freaking spectacular. So was Walter Payton. So was Emmitt Smith. Let's go into this with an open mind and see what's up. And that's where I landed. So yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yep. I exactly did the same thing. Kind of went in thinking that Brown, but I really was thinking I might be able to make a strong case for Barry, and you could make a strong case for Barry, to be
You
honest.
really can. You really
But
can.
I ended up with with Brown as well, and no regrets, that's for sure.
Yeah, his numbers just he's like it's like looking at his numbers in the NFL or like looking at Wilt Chamberlain's numbers in the NBA. They are so far ahead of everybody else at his time frame. You know, it's just Wilt Chamberlain was averaging 50 points a game when nobody else was averaging 30. Jim Brown was doing what he was doing when nobody was even sniffing it. You know what I mean?
Right, and he was as big as linebackers.
Dude, he was huge. Huge. What do they list him on at Football Reference? 6'2", 230, something like that. Yeah,
Um,
6'2", 232.
Yeah. That was probably the size of linebackers back then, or maybe even defensive linemen.
That was the size of defense. Like wait, give me one sec here because this is perfect. This is a good comparison. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. Here we go. Hey, Chuck Bednarik, one of my favorite Eagles of all time that I never saw play, the last two-way player in the NFL, retired in 1962. Okay, so he played in the Jim Brown era, and he played center and defensive tackle, and he was 6'2", 233. One
So,
pound heavier than Jim Brown.
so Jim Brown is running out there the size of a center and a defensive tackle as run at a running back. Wow.
Can you imagine a running back the size of Dexter Thomas now?
Wow.
Oh, I love it, man.
All right. Well, that's our list.
Boom. Good stuff, man. That was fun.
Yeah, we'll go back next week and any other news that happens between now and then, we'll hit that like we did today. And we'll do the quarterbacks, the top 10 quarterbacks of all time.
Love it. Perfect. And one thing I would like to throw out there, maybe to think about for next week, is everything you said, and then also just not doing all 32 teams. You do Cowboys, I do Eagles preview of upcoming free agency.
Oh, yeah, okay. But
Just
I don't know. I don't know how. Can I just say Dallas is not going to do anything? Because they're probably
yeah, it'll
not.
be the Cowboy segment will be very short, probably. But that's awesome, man. Oh God, you see, Mike is out there on his podcast stumping for some movement. I don't think he's trying to get him to trade for who's the
Miles Garrett.
defensive. Yes, yes.
Although if they get him, that would be amazing.
It
Him
would
and
be incredible. It
him
would
and
be
Parsons.
incredible.
But I can't. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, well, I love it, man. Yeah, you can make the segment as short as you want, and the all I'm going to do is just I want to list the main the important Eagles that are free agents. That's
Yeah,
and
that's what I'll
I'm
do.
not even
I'll do the Cowboys that are free agents.
right on because Eagles have a few that are big and they're going to have some decisions to
Did
make.
I
So
hear? Did I hear that Darius Slay says he wants to play for Detroit?
he said he wants to play for either Detroit or Philly.
He better
He
not.
just
If he goes, I hope he goes to. Well, I mean, I know you hope he goes to the Eagles. If he goes to Detroit, that's huge.
huge. He listen, the dude is like he's like 35 or something, and he's still playing awesome. So listen, I think they're going to let him walk, and I think if I had to bet right now, I bet he does end up there because they need him. They need a good corner for sure. The Eagles just drafted two incredible young corners, so I don't see them giving big money to a 35-year-old, even though he's still a great player. So yeah, I think there's a really good chance that happens.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice, good stuff, my man.
All right. So that'll be next week. Hopefully, you guys join us. Thank you for joining us here. With the top tens, they're always a lot of fun. And don't forget, we do the baseline podcast with Jordan, where we give our top 10 at each baseball position, and those are a lot of fun too, and just as hard.
No doubt, man. No doubt. We're working on our outfield list for we're gonna do soon here, and holy moly, it is mind bending.
Yeah, yeah. There's too many. Well, we're doing the top 20 outfielders, but
Yeah.
even
Oh,
so.
dude, like the first list I looked at had like Reggie Jackson at like 22, and I'm like, how am I gonna do this? I love it, man. This is great. Well, thank you as always, man. This was a freaking blast.
Absolutely, no doubt about it, guys. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, I will see you later.